There's a lot of things about me you don't know anything about, Daddy. Things you wouldn't understand. Things you couldn't understand. Things you shouldn't understand.
I don't understand.
You don't want to get mixed up with a guy like me. I'm a loner, Daddy. A rebel. So long, Dad.
Hello, and welcome to the Void. To the Void, a slightly upgraded Void. I wonder how that happened. We must have leveled up.
Yeah, definitely.
Leveled up in the Void. One of those power bars you run over.
Yeah, how do you upgrade a vast and infinite nothingness?
I don't know. Our chairs are better, and
That's true.
We have
better.
this fine table and a lamp.
Ooh.
And some mugs.
Yep. And a wider shot. Expansive.
The Void has gotten more expansive.
Yes. It is ever expanding, after all.
Indeed. There's room enough in the Void for us all.
But there better be, because that's where we're all going.
Let's talk about that. I think the people want to know our beliefs.
Our philosophical musing.
Well, that's sort of as good a segue as any to talk about what we're going to talk about in the Void today, which is a sad sort of thing, which we're going to talk about Paul Reubens, aka Pee Wee Herman, because we are of that era.
Definitely. I was born in 78. I was at the perfect age to be a Pee Wee Herman fan, and I super was.
Yes. I was not. Only because I was kept in a box for most of my childhood in a basement with no lights or anything.
Yeah.
So I wasn't allowed to have fun or...
You were given only Bibles to eat.
Yeah, Bibles, and I wore curtains as clothes.
Christian tabernacles.
Yeah.
I'll cut that out. That was dumb.
That was fine. So I didn't have a lot of pop culture growing up.
Yeah.
I had my brain for fun, and that is all. That is it.
Well, I can tell you, being the age I was when Pee-wee's Big Adventure came out, I'm not sure what year that was, probably 85, 86, somewhere around there. It was like instant for every kid around then. I mean, you were really young, you wouldn't have been watching it anyway,
Yeah.
but I was like right at that sweet spot. It was like instant classic, instant idol. I mean, between Pee Wee Herman and Buckaroo Banzai, I developed a long-lasting obsession with bow ties.
That's true.
Yeah.
I mean, you still like them. You never really wear them anymore.
Yeah.
But I am a fan now. Especially learning more about the art directors for the Pee Wee Herman show.
For sure.
Because that's all I ever care about. I don't care about anything else. Which we will talk about. So we're gonna just kind of like talk about his career and a little bit about who he was. And just kind of like appreciate it's our appreciation episode. Okay, so he was born in 1952. I have a million notes. I have to read them because I don't have a memory and we don't have a dry erase board. It would have to be like the size of this room for the amount of information that I wrote down. But all of this is very interesting to me. I'm generally only interested in nonfiction. I love reading about people's lives and kind of like how they became who they became, influence, what they were actually like, at least a little bit, because Paul Reubens was a very private person. Obviously, no one knew he had fucking cancer, I'm sure, aside from his very, very close friends.
6 years he kept that under wraps.
That's a long time, and he didn't look Ew?
Yeah.
Really?
I mean, I don't really recall a whole lot of public appearances in the last few years, but that Netflix movie did in 2017, which may or may not have been before the diagnosis. Anyway, he looked healthy. He looked fine.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I read that he kind of had problems with aging since his character was supposed to be this youthful, sort of exuberant creature. So I think he just had an issue with that. I think he didn't like making a lot of appearances. He did a fair amount of voice work, and he did some cameos and things like that. But we can get into that later. So he, let's see, was born in New York, but pretty much grew up in Sarasota.
Oh, a stone's throw away from my own hometown.
Yep. He loved Ringling Brothers, Barnum and Bailey circus. He loved going to the circus.
Yeah, he was very influenced by that whole circus aesthetic.
Yes, he was very influenced by that form of entertainment in general.
Sure.
And he also really enjoyed I Love Lucy. And apparently that's sort of like what inspired him to get into comedy.
Yeah.
Make people laugh.
So it was really like a whole aesthetic that was like very loud, kind of chaotic, and just big in general.
Yeah, I think so. Sort of grand.
Yeah.
Like I said, he was in Sarasota, born from a Jewish family, and his parents owned a lamp store. His father was actually really interesting. They talked about some of his military background. He was a pilot, like one of 12 Jewish pilots who did some kind of amazing things. But... Yeah. And we have to, at this point, include his high school picture, which I saw is like, oh man, I don't know. It's very rigid looking and like, it doesn't really at all look like him in any way, shape, or form. Like big clunky glasses. He just looks very like
super nerdy and
very nerdy. He looks depressed to me in it. I don't know. There's not like a ton. I didn't really read a ton about his childhood because I really wanted to just kind of get to, who he became as this persona and all of that. So, from 1977 to 1979, he began performing in local comedy clubs. And I assume this was in California. He went to the California Institute of the Arts. So he's a bachelor's of fine art from there. And during this time, he made 14 guest appearances on The Gong Show.
Oh, wow.
So I don't think he really had a problem with shyness.
Yeah.
Oh, I did also read this kind of like little anecdotal thing about his childhood. He has 2 siblings, and he loved performing so much that his father actually built him a little stage at home.
Aww.
And so he used to put on shows and things like that. I mean, I feel like with these sorts of personalities, you always hear little stories like that. Like,
right, yeah.
They've just always loved it, just from a very young age. That's how they always were. And then also during this time, this is sort of like a really important period of time. He became part of a LA improv group called the Groundlings, and he was in that for 6 years. This is where he met Bob McClurg, John Paragon, Susan Barnes, and one of his best friends, Phil Hartman.
This is very surprising to hear. I don't ever recall seeing Pee Wee and Phil Hartman together.
So I did see some pictures of Phil Hartman was on his show at some point. He was like dressed up as a weird cowboy.
Oh, interesting.
So we're gonna have to see what the hell that's about.
Yeah.
I mean,
he might have been very busy in Saturday Night Live at that point. I feel like Pee Wee's Playhouse and his run on Saturday Night Live were kind of at the same time.
Yeah, I'm sure. Let's see. And so this is kind of where Fuck that pen. Keep dropping it. Pee Wee Herman originated from. Okay, so he was it was during like an improv exercise in 1978. And Phil Hartman and John Paragon helped develop this character. The name Pee Wee's first name comes from a 1-inch Pee Wee brand harmonica. And the last name Herman.
Paging Mr. Herman. Mr. Herman, you have a telephone call at the front desk.
It was just a kid that he knew in his youth.
Yeah.
That was like kind of a big, over-exaggerated sort of character, I guess. But like an actual child that he knew.
Right. Oh, I never knew that about the harmonica. Like
Yeah.
one of those little barbershop quartet, like one key harmonica.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. And then the suit and bow tie also came from other Groundlings members.
Mhm.
So it all just sort of,
It all kind of came together.
during like sort of a very experimental period in his life and kind of dipping his toe into comedy. So feel free to stop me or make comments at any point. I'm just reading facts.
Mhm.
We should talk about more things, but I guess this is just kind of the beginning.
But yeah, we're just kind of laying the foundation here.
And a lot of this is from Wikipedia, I might add.
Yeah.
I mean, I read other things, but this is sort of kind of like going through these periods in his life, which I'm sure we'll be adding some clips and stills,
Yeah,
all kinds of
for
things
sure.
like that. 1981 to 1984, let's see, Reubens auditioned for Saturday Night Live, but was rejected. Gilbert Gottfried got his place instead.
Yeah.
Apparently they were too similar, and then Gottfried had a friend on the inside there,
So he had a leg up.
he had a leg up.
Yeah.
This is like my favorite kind of thing right here. What happens? This is my all-time favorite thing in life. Reubens was so pissed off and bitter and just fucking angry about the whole thing and disgusted that he self-funded his then stage act at a theater called the Roxy Theater, which still exists in LA. And the Pee Wee Herman show ran for 5 fully sold out months. He had midnight shows for adults, and then he had like weekly matinees for children,
Oh.
all
wow.
completely sold out.
Yeah.
So this is actually like his disgust and
It
anger.
just drove him
It
to
drove him, yeah.
to try much harder to succeed.
Yes, I love that.
Yeah.
That's my favorite thing.
Just running on rage.
Fuck yeah. It's how you get a ton of stuff done. And I can always guarantee you, like, vast majority of people in Hollywood that have made it anywhere, that is how they've done it.
Yeah.
I can almost guarantee, unless they're like super hot and people are just like, well, I want your asshole, so now you're a star.
I want your asshole.
I mean, there's a lot of that,
Yeah.
you know?
I remember seeing, when I was a little kid, I remember seeing a bit of his more adult-themed HBO special before, like, he made Pee-wee's Big Adventure and stuff like that. And it didn't, like, I remember seeing it, but not really striking a chord with me.
Because you didn't get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were too young.
Yeah. He had, like, a lady on stage with him, and they were both, like, children characters, and
Mhm.
he had, like, shoe mirrors to see up her dress and stuff like that.
Oh, wow. Yeah. That character was always really tongue-in-cheek, I feel.
Yeah.
And I think that was very reminiscent of who he was also.
Yeah.
Because he was a collector of odd things.
Indeed. Got him in a little trouble in the early 2000s.
Yeah. I mean, we can talk about that in a bit, but like, I don't know. When I think of Pee Wee Herman, I kind of lump him and John Waters into a very similar category.
Yeah.
Both kind of people that were like, well, fuck off. I'm doing my own thing, my very own thing. I have a like very loud, distinct voice that is mine.
Right. You have this this strange niche
Yeah.
where you're the only person filling that.
Super outsiders.
I think that is what allows us all to appreciate his work, even as adults, is that you see more and more like how it is like high art almost. I don't know about high art, but
No, I think I would agree with that.
Yeah.
I would. Especially like when I start talking about some of the influence for his show. Because that to me is... That's why I care about this person.
Yeah.
Because of what he did aesthetically and his choices. He very much had a hand in all of it. He
Definitely.
was like extremely meticulous when it came to how he presented himself as a character, as a person, and then aesthetically with his show, like, and as well as appearance.
Right.
So like, you don't get to that sort of iconic level without having some sort of obsessive personality. You have to have
Definitely. It was like when you're a little kid, you're dazzled by all the interesting stuff that's going on. It's very loud, very colorful.
Yeah.
But when you're older, you see how imaginative and creative it was, and like, Hunter S. Thompson had like the gonzo journalism stuff, and that almost feels like what Pee Wee was doing with children's entertainment. Is kind of like this gonzo approach.
You're completely right. So the way we did this episode is I just read a ton of stuff and kind of wrote down all the facts, and Matt wasn't privy to any of this. We kind of just decided to have a conversation where I'm going to present
frank
facts.
Discussion, yeah.
But you're completely right. Like, and I think that was his appeal.
Yeah.
I mean, these are things that people commented about who closely worked with him. Like, that mattered to him. That, like, both sides could appreciate it. Like, children and adult. And also, like, I don't know if you want to talk about inner child kind of stuff, but your inner child, like, it appeals to you. It still.
Yeah.
And just sort of like what their interests were, him and his very small crew of people that worked on his show, they all had to have a lot in common to pull all of that off.
Yeah.
And he had very much had a hand in all of that. So right, like a lot of stars probably wouldn't. Okay, but anyway, we'll get to that in a second. But they wouldn't care. They wouldn't have any perception of like
I get what you're saying.
What it takes to make all of this tie together or anything like that,
Yeah, the things that make an icon, like Mr. Rogers was deeply involved in everything that went on in his show, and stuff like that. It's
only much less eccentric, I feel.
It's true. But
Mr. Rogers, I love him.
Yeah, it does hammer the point of how men like that are perceived by especially the culture in the 80s, where if like you were not masculine, if you weren't like super masculine presenting, if you were even slightly effeminate, like all of these people were accused by conservatives of being pedophiles and stuff like that.
Yeah. Plus, that's a dark downturn.
Yeah.
All right, so he's doing really well with his rage-fueled success. Fucking great, love that. And so that's when HBO took an interest, and they did an on-location. I think it was just an episode in like 1981, and I was born in 1983, so like I fucking ever saw this thing. I never saw it.
Right.
So I don't know if there were multiple episodes or what. Like, we'll have to see. Anyway, he's starting to get some recognition. And then Reubens appeared as Pee Wee in 2 Cheech and Chong movies, one in 1980 and one in 1981.
Oh, really?
So this is all around the same time. The one in 80 was Cheech and Chong, next movie. I am not a Cheech and Chong fan at all. I get very bored with them. I'm glad they exist, but it's not really for me.
When you're 16 and you're smoking pot, then Up in Smoke is comedy gold, but as soon as you quit smoking pot, that movie is shit.
I smoked pot as a teenager, and I did not care about it at all. Like, it wasn't. And then he was in Cheech and Chong, Nice Dreams. So yeah, with all of this interest, he's sort of getting this reputation. And he had a description of, quote, bizarre, and also, quote, the weirdest comedian around. So he was kind of becoming this outsider.
Yeah.
Kind of probably had cult following, which he will forever have.
Definitely.
Let's see. So this is also when he kind of decided that he was going to start staying in character during interviews, during everything. So it really made, it's kind of like that Andy Kaufman-esque,
Yeah.
like, what is this? Is this real? Is this a joke? Like, you know, and this is like before the internet or anything really existed, so you can't look information up about people and like stalk them weirdly and find things out about them. So this is what he wanted. He wanted the public to kind of believe that he was this sort of outlandish character, which, I mean, I can remember when I was younger, you know, thinking that that was it. That was just who he was.
Yeah.
Like Tiny Tim, you know, like this strange...
Yeah, the 80s were like...
Right?
I guess that was kind of a trend in the 80s, was like having a zany persona. When you think of like Tiny Tim and Emo Phelps, Weird Al, Dr. Demento.
Yeah, just sort of like these larger than life, strange, eccentric creatures. All right, so early and mid 80s, he appeared on Letterman as Pee Wee a number of times, which also started growing his fan base quite a bit. Like, I think that kind of was the main catalyst.
Right.
So this enabled him to take his show on the road. So he played somewhere called the Guthrie Theater, a theater in New York called Caroline's, and in 1984, he played Carnegie Hall and it sold out.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
Yeah. And now this is because of that, this is how Pee Wee's Big Adventure came about.
And when they finally pulled the driver's body from the twisted, burning wreck, it looked like this.
And Warner Brothers hired him to write the script.
Oh, he wrote it.
He wrote that script, yeah.
Wow.
Him and, let's see, Phil Hartman. And there is another guy, which I failed to write down.
What a perfect storm of all these big people and creativity coming together.
Yeah.
Like, well, as they're all up and coming, you have Tim Burton, you have Danny Elfman doing the score, Pee Wee Herman and Phil Hartman writing.
Score?
Yeah.
I didn't even see that.
Yeah.
There you go. Good old spooky Danny Elfman. So Reubens, he started writing the script and he wanted to do like an adaptation of Pollyanna. So apparently that was his favorite movie.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen that movie?
I've never seen that movie.
Yeah, it's like sickly sweet, sort of positive and...
Yeah, that's the only thing I know about it is people describe like naive, positive-mindedness as Pollyanna thinking.
Which I guess would really fit into his persona
and
what he was trying to convey. Plus, like, I'm sure this was with the stipulation, like, you're doing this for children. So, it makes sense. But apparently he got really inspired by the Warner Brothers studio lot. And everybody was just riding bikes. And that is how, the bike theme came about.
Yeah.
Which, Pee Wee Herman's bike is here in Pittsburgh.
Yeah. Is it in the Heinz History Museum or is it in the Warhol? It's somewhere.
There's like a bike museum. Yeah. I've never been there. It's weird that it's here. Like, really weird.
Yeah. I was reading a little bit about it, and there were like a bunch of them used for the movie.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And he has like one of like 5 that are left, because I guess a lot of them were destroyed and like disappeared. And
5 is not that many.
No, it's not.
All right, so we have one of them.
Yeah. Right here in Pittsburgh.
Maybe we'll go see it, but probably not.
It is a bike museum after all.
I don't care enough about that. I don't care about much. I care about art direction and making things.
Yeah.
And cool practical effects. And that's it. That's all I care about. And this thermos. So yeah, he read the script with Phil Hartman. And then they chose Tim Burton to direct after seeing his work on Vincent and Frankenweenie. Okay, so the budget for that movie was $7 million. And then it grossed $40,940,000.
Quite a success.
Very much so. Released 1985. It got mixed reviews, I'm sure, because it was just weird.
Yeah.
But ultimately has a large cult following, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, every kid loved that movie. I didn't meet any kids who were like, fuck Pee Wee Herman.
Yeah.
Every single kid after that movie came out was saying, I know you are, but what am I?
You're crazy. I know you are, but what am I? You're a nerd. I know you are, but what am I? You're an idiot.
I know you are, but what am I?
I know you are, but what am I? I know you are, but what am I? I know you.
Oh my god,
Yeah.
yes.
The say it, don't spray it. And
Oh my god, yes. Nobody's saying tequila, though.
Everybody sang tequila.
No, I
Every
mean,
little
like,
kid did the...
They did the dance,
Yeah.
but I don't think they understood what tequila was or something.
Well, no, but it didn't stop you from saying tequila.
I guess I have a limited memory of my childhood. I blocked it out.
You were like 2.
I was in the box.
Yeah.
I was in the box in the basement.
You were still in diapers when this was going on.
When do you get out of diapers?
Yeah, 2 and 3.
This was 85.
Yeah.
Alright. Yeah, it's possible. Okay, so 1986 to 1991. Pee Wee's Playhouse.
Pee Wee's Playhouse! It's a scream! It's a wacky fun time! Saturday Rocks on CBS!
Originally, CBS wanted a cartoon.
Oh, that would have been...
And Paul Reubens was like, hell no.
Right.
He met with a lot of disdain. He had no interest in that whatsoever. Like,
I'm sure they just wanted to save a bunch of money instead of building the elaborate sets and props. Yeah.
Probably. Oh my god. I was thinking about how depressing that would have been.
Yeah.
And just flat and lame. That would have killed his character.
It would have. It would have gone nowhere.
That would have been it.
Yeah.
You're going nowhere.
I got 3 minutes.
Boy. This is just normally how we talk. We
It's
can't help it. So, 1986, CBS agreed to sign a contract for Reubens to act, produce, and direct. He had like full creative control. They had very little say in anything.
That was a smart move on their part.
Yes. And he had a budget of $325,000 per episode,
Wow.
which is pretty high at the time. That was the price of a primetime sitcom.
Yeah.
Cyndi Lauper made his opening music under the pseudonym Ellen Shaw.
I didn't know that until you mentioned that earlier today, and I can't believe I never picked up on it because I can hear her voice perfectly in my head.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
Yeah.
He was also really good friends with her.
Yeah.
Like, they hung out a lot.
Pee Wee was kind of punk.
Yeah, I mean, he was
He was friends with the Ramones.
weirdly subversive.
Yeah.
I think he was probably difficult, and I think he was a difficult person.
Complex person?
Yeah, complex is fair.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the... Not that there's anything wrong with that.
No.
I think he was just very meticulous.
Driven, kind of
and
tunnel visioned, maybe.
maybe. He was definitely very intelligent,
Yeah.
I think, as well, with his choices. So kind of like busting up the Pee Wee kind of character, but that was who was behind it, you know?
Yeah.
So art and art direction. Wayne White, who I love a lot, he has a documentary. I wrote that down somewhere because I can never remember the name of it.
Beauty is embarrassing.
Yeah. But I'm just a big fan of Wayne White.
What else has he worked on?
He worked on Beekman's World.
Oh.
He worked on the Weird Al show.
That makes sense.
He made, and I remember this, I'd forgotten it, but now that I heard it, I remember music videos, The Smashing Pumpkins, Tonight Tonight, he did.
That makes sense too.
Peter Gabriel's Big Time, he did.
Nice.
So, I mean, he's worked on a lot of different stuff, but those were the most notable to me, like the ones that I remembered.
You're right. So his work is very distinctive and...
Yeah, extremely, and it still is.
Yeah.
Because he's still making giant, weird, boxy, like, hard puppets.
Yeah.
He has art shows all the time. I mean, he's painting a lot too now, but he makes cool stuff. I love his work. But the aesthetic is still, like, really there.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just gonna get on the list of the puppets that he made.
Yeah.
Okay, so he did Dirty Dog, Randy, Conky, Mr. Kite, Cool Cat, Billy Baloney, Countess the Cow, Flory, and Roger the Monster, which I don't really recall that one so much. It's like an eyeball thing.
I don't either. Most of those I have no idea. I know
Are you
Randy.
serious?
Yeah.
Well, remember the little band? Dirty Dog, Cool Cat.
Yeah.
Then there was like...
Oh yeah, I do remember them. And
Do you remember Flory?
The sunflowers.
Yeah, I think that was someone else that made those.
Yeah.
But so I think he was like 21 when he got hired on this show.
Wow.
I'm not sure exactly how all of that came about. The other guys were Gary Panter and Rick Heitzman. So those are like the three big art directors. You know, they made everything. I think they were kind of like younger. They had more of like fresh aesthetic perspective.
Yeah.
They didn't want to go with a very 80s look. So they actually had a rule: no floating triangles and no squigglies.
Okay.
Which I just thought was super funny. Let's see. So that's pretty much that. But we're going to keep talking about the art direction for the show. Because I feel like, especially now, looking at everything, because I'm seeing this show as an older person. And that's what I...
Remember is what you...
No, that's what I'm looking at.
Yeah.
That's what I'm going to like pay more attention to. The dialogue is almost like it's more for kids. But again, like all I care about is the art direction.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all I care about. So anything that you can like look at and see, I don't know how to put this. It was just like on a higher level.
Yeah, it definitely was. I mean, especially if you watch reruns of the Ernest show. I forget what it's even called. Hey Vern, I think it was called.
Yeah, Hey Vern. Oh man.
Yeah.
That show was all types fun.
That show was a lot of fun, but it definitely wasn't on the same level.
No.
And Ernest, in general, was never on the same level as Pee Wee. I think he came pretty close. I mean, I loved both of them when I was a kid, but...
Yeah. I don't think he had as much appeal as
Yeah.
Pee Wee.
Definitely not. Because Pee Wee, you could put that show, Pee Wee's Playhouse, you could put that in like an empty white set and still be entertained because, you know, Pee Wee was a fantastic performer.
Yeah. Yeah, the voice, I mean, like, nobody could do that.
Right.
The weird inflection, I don't know.
Yeah.
Nobody can do that. He was the only one that could do that like that. Like, that was a completely original
Definitely.
sort of thing. So apparently, Paul Reubens, along with his three producers and art directors, I don't call them really, they all were into painting. They were all really into subculture art. They were really open to experimental art in general. And Painter actually called him the dream boss because they would all just like bring these crazy ideas. They all said like working on that show, they kind of got spoiled.
Yeah.
And none of them ever found anything like that ever
I'm
again.
sure.
That was
yeah.
it.
To have that sort of creative freedom.
Yeah, and they knew that they were kind of, you know, in this sort of zeitgeist situation where they were kind of just like, you know, riding this big personality, and they
Yeah.
actually do these things. Like, they got away with these things in a really mainstream show. Like,
Yeah.
that's crazy.
So to be able to create freely without like a lot of
Right.
producer interference and stuff like that.
that is
Yeah, network interference.
an almost never ever happening sort of thing.
For sure.
Unless you're just, you know, you turn your back on Hollywood and you're like, fuck it, I'm doing my own thing, and that's it. And then you get, like, what? Maybe you do stuff on YouTube, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, one of the reasons why we've created this show is so we could have some weird creative freedoms with things and, like,
Oh yeah,
outlet.
definitely.
Because we can't find it in the real world. So we're trying to make our own. I don't know. I relate to that.
Absolutely. I do too. I
Like,
mean,
you have to make your own culture when you can't find it.
yeah.
And
And just like in general, like I have a hard time creating by request or for people.
for people.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's garbage. It gets ruined.
Yeah.
It will always get ruined.
When
because then it doesn't become
it's not
yours
yours
anymore. Yeah.
when it's not like your heart speaking.
Yeah.
And,
It falls apart. Especially when you're trying to appeal to something larger and people want things more commercial.
Mhm.
It's a nightmare. I mean, that becomes a prison,
yeah.
you know? So, but here's the thing about all of this is, like, when you watch that show, like, you see that. I think if you're a creative person at all, you can feel it.
Yeah.
And you see, I mean, there are a lot of weird things happening in the 80s, and even into the early 90s. There were, like, a lot of very strong influences. There were a lot of big pop cultural things happening
Hmm.
that carried on for decades, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
And he's always going to stand out as something on its own. Like, it was part of a very crazy time. Like you were saying earlier, like, a lot of big personalities, but, like, he's, like, his own thing. Whatever he was. Right?
Yeah. I mean, he stands alone in his field, in his niche. Like, it's just him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Pee Wee's Playhouse was strongly influenced by Cubism,
Oh.
which, right? That makes sense.
That does make sense. I didn't even realize I was talking about cubism, but now you say it.
Yeah, exactly. You were. That's why this is interesting.
Yeah.
Like, you didn't know any of this stuff, and it's sort of like,
It's in there. Yeah.
it really is. That's it. Like, that's why I'm saying, like, when you watch something really purely creatively fueled,
Yeah.
I mean, like, purely, you fucking know. You can tell. All of them had aesthetics. The aesthetics that they were really interested in were the 50s and 60s. And Wayne White especially wanted to be very anti-Muppet.
Interesting.
Yes. And he still is that way. Like,
Yeah.
he likes, like, hard materials, not any of the fuzzy stuff. You know, he still does a ton of stuff out of cardboard. Maybe we'll put a link to the
Yeah.
documentary, because it's a super good documentary. I really highly recommend it if you're into artist documentaries.
You can definitely see all these things are like revelations for me that shouldn't be, like the 50s and 60s
Yeah.
aesthetic. Like, you say it and like I'm going, oh yeah, you can definitely see that, like, atomic age
Oh,
camp,
absolutely, yeah.
like the kind of aesthetic that you see in Ren and Stimpy cartoons. And,
Ren and Stimpy is definitely mentioned, like, along the same lines of that, you
yeah.
know. Well, even, like, the I Love Lucy,
Yeah.
you know, like, that was a huge influence for him. You can kind of see that even with his female characters,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Dottie.
Like, they have the big dresses, and usually they have sort of big poofy hair,
Yeah.
like the very 50s, 60s.
Or the poodle skirts.
Yeah, that whole look. 1988, Paramount puts up for the sequel, The Big Top Pee Wee.
It's Abraham Lincoln!
May I have your autograph, Mr. Lincoln? Oh, thank you so much. I'm such a big fan of yours, Abraham.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
It's Pee Wee!
which did terribly.
I saw it. I contributed.
Yeah, it didn't do well. The budget was $20 million and it grossed $15 million.
Oof.
Yeah. So, I don't know. I don't know if it was just like...
I don't think it was like waning popularity or anything, but I just feel like the circus vibe wasn't the right vibe for it.
Really?
Because I know he was super into the circus and everything, but it was like it took place on a farm.
Yeah.
And Chris Christopherson was there.
This your farm, kid?
Yep, I'm Pee Wee Herman.
Mace, Montana, manager of Cabrini Circus.
Nice to meet you, Mr. Montana.
Mace! You gotta do something. I can't get to the first aid supplies. And people are hurting. The animals are loose everywhere, and the equipment...
Pull yourself together, Snowball.
I got a first aid kit in my house, Mr. Montana.
Get going, kid.
Well, that's enough of a reason right there to
Walk
watch
away,
it.
you son of a bitch.
I love Chris Christopherson.
I love the Whistler.
What a weird monster of a human. I love him. Yeah, you know.
Yeah.
The Valeria Golino.
Oh, yeah, the lady from Hot Shots.
Yeah. And their very erotic kiss.
Yeah, they get busy. They get down.
Yeah,
too.
it was like a hardcore. I don't
He lays
know.
her down on the bed. And it was racy for a kid's movie.
All right. Well, it didn't do well.
Yeah,
I like all of his movies, so
I love that movie.
I can't really, crap on it at all.
Yeah.
He was billed as Paul Mall, and he was the voice of the ship's computer in Flight of the Navigator. I loved that movie so much when I was a kid.
I hated that movie.
Yeah.
Because I hated space for some reason when I was a kid.
But you liked Buckaroo Banzai. That was like
That wasn't really like...
sort of like a spacey thing.
The only thing that took place in outer space that I really loved as a kid was The Last Starfighter.
Yeah, The Last Starfighter.
Yeah. I just wasn't into space.
I liked space. Flight of the Navigator was the shit. Along with that, he did some other voice work. I think he did like really random shit. Like for Disney, he was the voice in like one of those simulation rides.
Oh,
for
weird.
like a Star Wars
Yeah.
ride, which he did later in life as well.
Yeah.
He did a lot of really random, weird little voice bit things. I guess we'll bring up the scandal.
The Dark Times.
Yeah, the Dark Times, just a little though, which was 1991. Kind of like the dumbest thing ever.
Yeah.
Compared to scandals these days, even with our politicians, this was like absolutely nothing. This was like negative nothings.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's a little more than nothing. I think it would still be pretty scandalous in this day and age.
I guess so. But I don't know, like...
Nobody's perfect.
I guess I just don't care.
I don't care either. I mean,
It just
when
seems...
you're talking about adult theaters, everybody knows what people do in adult theaters. So if there were like vice cops or something there, they must have known he was there. It definitely got out real fast.
Oh, yeah.
Like the night he was arrested.
Yeah, I actually remember hearing about this.
I do too.
And at the time, I wasn't really a Pee Wee fan, so I didn't really know anything about him. I just knew he was like a really weird, eccentric
Yeah.
character, and I was just like, that makes sense.
I mean, I was definitely old enough to be past like the Pee Wee Herman phase.
Mhm.
So I definitely, like an asshole, found all the jokes funny.
Mhm.
Like in Living Color did their skit with Jim Carrey with the Pee Wee Herman doll. And,
Yeah.
you know,
I'm sure
watch
there
me
was-
bang on my drum or whatever.
I'm sure there was all kinds of stuff. I mean,
Yeah, it was a lot of stupid shit. But that really took the wind out of his sails for a while.
yeah, so he was also doing a lot of stuff with the Make-A-Wish Foundation. Apparently he was like visiting a lot of dying children. People who were close to him kind of were just like, he was super burnt out.
Yeah.
He just was kind of like over everything.
Yeah.
Like CBS had wanted a 6th season, and he had declined. This was like before the scandal too.
Yeah.
Like he was just like, I can't do this shit anymore.
Yeah.
And he had apparently always wanted to work on lots of other projects and, you know, do more than just the Pee Wee Herman
Right, which
character.
is definitely why when he reemerges in the late 90s, he is taking on more adult type characters. He's
Right.
in Buffy and Mystery Men. And,
Well, this is also, I wanted to bring this up specifically for you. So CBS agreed to end the show after 5 seasons and a Christmas special.
Christmas! Hello, everybody. My name's Pee Wee. What's yours? Welcome to my special Christmas special, starring me, Pee Wee Herman.
I almost forgot to talk about the most magnificent article of clothing I've ever seen.
We can't find anything that stacks up.
No.
We have to make it.
Snowsuit is pure magic.
Snow! Ah! Yellow snow! Watch! I'm gonna make a snow angel! Look! I made an angel in the snow!
I want it so bad.
I don't even understand because you don't even really like loud clothing.
No.
And that thing is like...
It's so ridiculous.
It's so ridiculous and loud and oversized and nonsensical. Like,
it's fantastic.
but you love it so much. I love it too. The Christmas special is great.
Yeah, it
also.
really is.
It's like a bunch of fun.
Were the B-52s on there? Grace Jones?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he had like a lot of queer icons
Yeah.
on his show too. I mean, you know, the Playhouse garnered 22 Emmy Awards.
Wow. That's impressive. That's like, I think Frasier might still be at the top for like Emmy Awards.
Yeah.
But it's got to be giving Frasier a run for his money.
I don't know. I didn't look that up. That's just a lot of Emmy Awards.
It sure is.
After the scandal, 1992 to 2002, he was in Buffy, the movie, in 92.
God, that movie was 92. It feels like it's much later than that.
Yeah. Batman Returns,
Oh, yeah.
also in 92. In 93, he did some voice acting in Nightmare Before Christmas. He was a character called Locke. In 96, he was in Matilda and Dunstan checks in. In the 90s, he had a recurring character for 6 episodes of Murphy Brown. He was some ambitious secretary, I guess.
I did not watch Murphy Brown.
I feel like I watched
I have no memory
some
of it.
reruns.
Yeah.
I don't know. It was on. 1999 was Mystery Men.
Oh, man.
Such a bad movie.
It's terrible.
I love the aesthetics of that movie, though. Like,
I do too.
It's very fun. And then, of course, in 2001 is Blow.
Fantastic.
He did a great job in that
He
movie.
really did. I don't remember the character's name in that movie, but he was very, very memorable performance.
Barbie, he is yummy. He looks just like a Ken doll. Ken and Barbie, oh my God, it is so perfect. Girls, Give me about 5 minutes. I want to talk alone to the boys.
Okay.
Gentlemen?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Ow, my knee. 2002, Second Scandal.
Right.
He apparently was an avid collector of strange stuff and kitsch art.
Yeah.
And he often bought like entire lots
Right.
of things. He bought like muscle mags and like
From the 60s and stuff.
yeah.
Right?
So apparently there was like some nude pictures of younger kids. But it kind of got like completely thrown out
Yeah.
after they like reviewed the stuff, and like I don't even think he knew he had some of this stuff.
Yeah, it's like the court had decided that there was nothing that could be considered child pornography among it, which just goes to show, like, it's, you know, douchebag cops and prosecutors trying to railroad him because he's weird.
This all came about from Jeffrey Jones.
Oh, yeah.
And there was like the same guy that went after Jeffrey Jones. He was like a 17-year-old kid. Also had mentioned Paul Reubens.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so somehow that was all linked and whatnot. It all got thrown out. Nothing really ever came from it. He wasn't really, I mean, I think he was actually friends with Jeffrey Jones.
Yeah.
But I don't know. So let's see here. 2004 to 2008. He had a number of cameos, bit parts and things. He did commercials. He did some voice acting. Nothing really notable.
Right.
So he decided to kind of like bring Pee Wee back.
Yeah. He started doing like some public appearances.
Yeah,
as
he
Pee-wee.
he did public appearances, yes. And he did some live shows from 2009, 2010. I think they were like really popular.
Yeah.
Then 2016 was his final movie as
The
Pee-wee.
Netflix movie.
The Netflix movie, yes.
Which was okay. It wasn't the best thing in the world, but
I
was
liked
fun.
it. I mean, it was like kind of more for nostalgia, you know, the nostalgia of that character and the time and everything like that. The Judd Apatow produced and John Lee from Wonder Chosen directed. And it was received really well. So that had like a lot of queer undertones and is kind of considered a very queer movie.
Yeah.
You know, like Paul Reubens never really officially came out.
Yeah, he's like Michael Stipe. You don't really talk about it. You don't really know.
It's not our business.
Yeah, it makes no difference.
Just like his illness.
Yeah.
It's not our business. We don't own these people.
Right.
You know, like it's like everyone thinks celebrities are indebted to them because they're in like some sort of public light. It's just not true. You
Definitely
know? And
not.
It's for me also it's just like I just don't care. You know, like usually when a celebrity dies, it's like, oh, you know.
Yeah, even when they're like really surprising ones, you're like, oh no. Like Sinead O'Connor recently, like that, you know, it takes you back.
Exactly.
You know, but ultimately you're like, well.
I think for me the saddest one was Philip Seymour Hoffman because I really
that was a big loss. Yeah.
I really loved Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Dolores O'Riordan, however you say her last name, from the Cranberries. That was like, that was a really sad one.
You're a more music person than I am.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think like some of their deaths, they're tragic. Most deaths are really.
Yeah.
But like suicide's always really, really tragic.
Yeah.
And sad. I don't know.
But yeah, last week when the news broke and everybody thought it was a hoax for like 10 minutes.
Yeah, it was very bleak.
Yeah. It just came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And like I was on Facebook and his page had posted like a goodbye announcement. And I was like, whoa, is this even real?
Right. Yeah. And you texted me and I was like, holy shit. which is when, we all kind of figured it out.
And to have been battling cancer for 6 years.
It's a very long time.
And not be public about it.
Yeah.
It was just a big surprise.
It was very surprising. Yeah, it's like end of an era sort of thing.
It definitely is.
I think when Weird Al dies, I'm gonna be... I'll probably be more sad, actually.
I mean...
Weird Al has to live forever. Forever. He's not allowed to die. We don't give him permission.
Don't die, Weird Al.
We don't allow it. You can only die when we give you permission to die. Me or Matt.
This is true. This is correct.
Oh, boy.
We have that kind of power.
Yeah, that's right. Especially in the void.
In the void.
I wanted to mention some of his friends. Apparently, he was roommates with David Hasselhoff.
I read that on Facebook, actually.
Really early on, which I just wonder what that would have been like.
Polar opposites, you would think, but maybe they got along.
Like, I never would have even put them together in the same room ever.
Right.
I mean, I don't know. I'm not immersed in any sort of that, culture like that whatsoever. I don't know, but like, they're not synonymous in my head in any way,
Katie Seagal had posted something about how they were friends in college as well.
Really?
Yeah.
Man, he knew everyone.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess it was just sort of like the times. John Paragon, of course, was his zombie.
Yeah.
Hey, Pee Wee, what about that special wish?
My wish is that there's peace on Earth, and that everybody has the very merriest of Christmases, and a happy new year!
And
director of all the Barbarian Brothers movies, which are so near and dear to our hearts.
Want to do like a whole episode of John Paragon because he deserves it.
Yeah, I agree.
And he
underappreciated. Yeah.
Like hugely. Yeah, like speaking of Weird Al and UHF and the
Yeah, they had to have like a Kickstarter to get him interred where he wanted to be after his death.
Really?
Yeah.
His
family, I guess he just didn't have enough money, or there was a fundraiser to get it done.
Well, apparently he was very loved in Hollywood. And,
yeah.
Or Cassandra Peterson.
Elvira.
Yes.
Yeah.
He was Elvira. They were both Paul Reubens and John Paragon. She was very, very close with, apparently.
Yeah, I mean, they all kind of occupied the same space in pop culture.
Yeah, definitely.
Pop culture.
Pulp culture. I'll take my culture extra pulpy.
I like my cheese lumpy. But very sad to see Pee Wee go.
Yes.
Very grateful for all of the entertainment.
Definitely.
And just the positive message that you couldn't help but receive when you were a kid is being yourself.
Definitely,
it's okay to be weird, being creative.
That was something that I read about him. He was Paul Reubens was an extremely heavy smoker, and he really wanted to keep that out of,
public
eye.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he hid that. He wouldn't endorse sugary snacks or food in any way. He really tried to be a good role model, and I guess that is part of the 91 shock of the scandal, you know, but I think he was just so
if he was looking to hang up his spurs for a little while,
he was so worn down and beat up, I think.
I guess he didn't. Now that I think about it, everybody had a freaking cereal in the late 80s, early 90s, but there never was. Even Batman had a cereal for a little while.
Batman's just those Bat Stars.
It just looked like Captain Crunch to me.
Yeah. all that shit was like super generic.
Yeah. It has like a slap a label on it kind of thing.
I mean, he could have like horribly sold out in a lot of ways that he probably didn't, you know. I think he had a lot of integrity. He certainly had vision for what he was and what he wanted.
Yeah.
You know, definitely will always be endeared to him.
Absolutely.
For the entertainer that he was. So, yeah, I mean, I'm glad we had him for as long as we did.
I am too.
Here's to you, Paul Reubens.
We love you, Pee Wee.
Pee Wee.